Hi,
Well,
Frank.
Gentlemen, good morning. Good afternoon.
well,
Good
we
afternoon,
have
sir.
got we have got a fabulous program today here on our big broadcast. We have the man about town, the legend himself, Frank Vernuccio, joining us to kick us off our broadcast day. We have Dan Perkins, who is busier than a fruit merchant these days with all his various projects, and then of course IQ Al Rizzoli, or I'll tell you, I upload our videos to BitChute, and every time I upload an IQ video, they just blister you. I don't know why. I have to send you some of these comments. It's almost like people don't even watch the video. They just see the name and then they just leave nasty comments. But we got IQ Alrasoli with us today. So let's start this off. Vernuccio, yesterday was an incredible day with this Middle East situation. Um, what do you make of all this, my friend?
Well, let's start with the weather report. Hell has frozen over because peace looks like it's on the possible outbreak in the Middle East. But also, Hillary Clinton, of all people, praised President Trump for his accomplishment. So, indeed, that
Well,
weather report must be looked at very carefully. Um, Look, let's understand how we got to this point, and I believe it began when the Trump administration took out Iran's nuclear power and the Israelis knocked out the air defenses of Iran. The monster behind all of the terrorism in the Middle East, financing it all, supporting it all, was Iran. As Iran was weakened substantially by both American and Israeli forces, that I think put this whole conversation in a new light for those who oppose peace, who support terrorism in the Middle East. You know, it's been said often enough, if you want peace, prepare for war. And that's exactly what the Trump administration and what the Netanyahu government has done. And that put us on the path of possible peace in that part of the world.
Dan Perkins, your thoughts, baby.
Oh, um, well, even Barack Obama was criticizing the Democrats, his own party, yesterday on making sure that we acknowledge somebody that has done something like Trump has done with his team, is trying to bring peace to the Middle East. I was surprised, quite honestly, that within such a short period of time, literally moments almost after the thing was signed, that Blinken and Biden were trying to take credit for laying the pipe, if you would, for all the success that was being accomplished by Donald Trump. In other words, they were trying to steal his thunder and try and get a little juice for himself. I thought that was, first of all, was in extremely poor taste. Biden was on watch when they attacked 1,200 people, and I didn't see a lot that he had done. So what concerned me, however, is that an IQ has schooled us so well. When you're dealing with a Muslim and you're an infidel, check your wallet and check your heart, because you could be shot or you could be killed instantaneously, regardless of what they say. And what happened today was one of the Hamas people who was running for the government in Gaza against Hamas was shot and killed by Hamas today. And yesterday, Hamas was shooting people, their own people, because they were celebrating that peace had, I believe, had come. So I wonder, given what's happening in terms of the violence already, not against the Jewish people, not against the rockets going into Israel, but the Hamas is turning against their own people. Whether this is going to accelerate. Now, Trump said today, either you put down your guns or we're going to take them from you. And I don't know what that means, Frank, how we're going to take them if without invading and starting all over again. Then what was the peace about? So it's to me it's something you want to celebrate, but it feels like wearing an old dirty shirt instead of something a crisp, clean one.
So IQ, what do you make of this? And then I've got a interesting question for Bernuccio.
Well, I sent you the article, and I said in the article I sent you that they will break the agreement, and they did exactly as I expected. They were supposed to release 28 dead bodies. They released 4, and again 4 today. You see, before they had the living hostages to leave her with. They have no living hostages, so they are using the dead hostages to leave her with. If I were Prime Minister of Israel, I will not release a single Palestinian, and I will start the war again. Literally, I would start the war again. Because we're not dealing with decent human beings. We're not dealing with people who will keep their word. This is impossible. Israel will never be able to make peace with Hamas, ever. Not now, not ever. Only the Europeans, by the way, stabbed Trump by declaring a Palestinian state. They stabbed him in the back while he was trying to make peace. The spineless bastards, all of them. Back to you, Frank.
So I have an interesting question, I guess, for Bernuccio. Yesterday, when Netanyahu was speaking in English to everyone, he was all, so happy and all these things. And then he gave another speech to the Israelis on TV. And he essentially said, nothing's going to change. We're going to keep going. Why is it when he talks to the people in the United States, he's got a certain way he does things, and then when he talks to his own people, he's like, okay, guys, we're going to keep going, and this is just the way it's going to be. My thing is why doesn't anybody connect these two?
Because you're not a politician. Because you're not a politician. You've got to understand the political mind. A politician will sell his mother to the whorehouse if it suits his purposes. You've got to remember that. That's a rule.
Well,
no,
I'm not kidding with you. It's a fact of life. Every
Just an
single
aside.
politician, when he talks to his own people, is one thing. When he talks to the public, is another. What do you think,
Just
Frank?
an aside, Anthony Blinken taking credit for this is like a football coach who has had 10 consecutive failing seasons, is finally fired. A new coach takes over, the team goes to the Super Bowl, and the ex-coach says, well, but I trained these guys. It was all my doing that got them there.
Yeah.
I got
If you look at it, one of the reasons why Netanyahu will talk differently to his own people and to Americans are an optimistic people, and we expect solutions. We expect something to actually change. I think in that part of the world, it's a slightly different attitude. They've been at this for 1,000 years, and they believe they'll be at it for another 1,000 years. But things have changed. The underpinnings of the terrorist groups that have taken hold of Gaza and Palestine and so much else are really going to lose their financing, have really no place to go at this point. So the future is optimistic. Now, does that mean Hamas is going to lay down its weapons and give in? Probably not. Does it mean that there might be more action that has to be taken by either the Israelis, the Americans, or both, or perhaps other friendly Arab countries? Yes, it does mean that. But those efforts will probably be successful, and you will see peace in the region. Not that it's going to come easily or quickly, but now there at least is a path towards that where there was not one before.
By the way, what Dan was talking about, the Hamas murdering their own people, they were murdering people who have raised their arms against them. These are clans in Gaza. The Arabs are not one human group. They're tribes, and the tribes are made out of clans. And the clans are literally loyal to each other. You kill one of them, he will kill 10 of you. So Hamas is not attacking only the ordinary people. They are attacking people who are challenging their authority.
IQ is bringing up something that's important to note in that part of the world, which is that we have seen, because of the propaganda from Arab governments, that the fight is between the Muslims and the Israelis. The real fight is between the more rational people in that part of the world and the governments that govern them. We see this particularly in Iran, where the government probably has less than 20% support from the Iranian people. And I think you're going to see that in other Islamic countries as well. The Islamic regimes have suppressed their own people. They are the reason for their own downfall. They are the reason why their countries are so backwards. The Israelis took over after the end of the Second World War, a fairly barren strip of land with nothing to really to commend it. They turned it into a paradise. The embarrassment Islamic regimes are enduring because of that is part of the reason why they've so urgently want to get rid of Israel in the past, because it showed how bad those ruling classes really are.
Spot on, honestly. Spot on. That's one of the reasons. Besides their hatred in the Quran, the other one is jealousy. Exactly what you just said. 1.6 billion Muslims cannot name 3 scientists. 3 out of 6 billion, 1.6 billion, they cannot name 3 scientists who have contributed anything to humanity. Israel, 7.9 million Jews, 6. And Israel only 77 years old. Of course, they want her dead. They want her dead because she's a testament for their failure.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you have a complete change or complete reversal between the progress of Western civilization and the, if you want to call it that, progress of Islamic civilization. The Islamic civilization began fairly well educated. Sure, they were always a warrior group, but they were enlightened. They came through with great advances in math and science and things of that sort. And they have descended down since then, becoming more and more medieval, whereas the West has ascended from medievalism into what it is now, an enlightened society.
Frank, when you study the history of the Arabs, and especially when you study the history of the scientists of the Arabs, you will find out that the scientists who excelled were not Sharia compliant. They were secular. And because they were secular, they were degraded even in their own time. So it's so important to understand. If you are Sharia compliant, not even a blade of grass will grow.
Yeah. Well said, IQ. Well said.
Yes.
So Frank, let me jump in there and try and throw a different perspective in what's going on here. My understanding is that there was a significant coalition of nations who came together behind Donald Trump to support this change in what's going to happen in Gaza. And that one of the things that impacted many of the nations in the Middle East was the fact that the economic opportunities of recreation of Gaza into Mar-a-Lago or the Riviera or whatever it is, was part of the carrot that Trump was able to put out there. And he even talked about it yesterday about the billions of dollars that these countries are going to commit to rehabilitate and redevelop the land that's been destroyed by this war. But I also thought that there was, and I want to get it right, but I got to have the impression that there are going to be peacekeepers collected from various nations around the world to try and quelch any additional fighting or rioting or whatever that's going on in Gaza, which is different than what has ever been done before. So I wanted to see if you could confirm what I was saying there. But it seems to me that as somebody once said, Frank, it's all about the Benjamins. If in fact Trump is able, through a deal with these nations who have, and especially the Middle Eastern nations, Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other ones, who have massive treasuries and massive investment funds, to bring themselves to become major investors in the rehabilitation of Gaza. If they've got money in the game, they're going to be very protective that that money gets to do what they wanted it to get done. And we're going to see a situation where it may be the money not going to the Hamas, but the money going to industrial and commercial development that turns this thing around.
Well said. In fact, I understand that the first nation to actually pledge troops is actually not from the Middle East. They're from Indonesia, who have said they would be giving troops to that part of the world. And I think that's an excellent point. I wonder if you'd permit me the liberty to share a hope that I have.
Yes.
If in fact things work well in Gaza going forward, I think it might have an example in a surprising other part of the planet. For far too long, the Russian people have suffered. They've suffered particularly under the Putin government, which has basically tilted Russia towards China rather than towards the West. There is absolutely no benefit to the nation of Russia to tilting towards China, none whatsoever. They have a long border and a long history of territorial disputes and a real danger for the future of the Russian nation. I think if Gaza works out, you might see on the part of some rational Russian figures saying, maybe we should tilt towards the West as well. Our prosperity, our future, our national security depend more on going with the West for people like the United States rather than towards China, in the same way that the people in Gaza were foolish to tilt towards terrorism rather than towards a rational way of getting prosperous.
Let me react to that if I could for just a second, Jim. I look at it, or what you were saying, and I understand what you're saying. And I'm not trying to be flippant with you, Frank. I admire you a great deal. But are you somewhat Pollyannish in your hope? Because what you're suggesting, can it take place in our lifetime?
I think it's going to be a long time. It depends how young you are. The Russian people do one thing better than everyone else, and that's suffer. And I guess they'll continue to suffer. But I do think it points a way forward. It points to an option that perhaps might not have been there before. And when you put new options on the table, things can happen.
But Frank, two things has happened. Putin himself said Trump deserves the Nobel Prize. And now, it doesn't matter, you can laugh. I can laugh too. But he said it, and he's the enemy. The other thing that's happening now, they are agreeing to meet with Trump to solve Ukraine. They're agreeing. So we have to see. We have to wait and see. Same thing with Hamas.
Putin is an old KGB guy, and one of the things he has always been a master of throughout his life is psychological warfare. And he believes he can play Trump like a fiddle.
He can't.
He will say nice things to him and then stab him in the back. So I think that Trump is knowledgeable enough, I think, at this point, particularly after Alaska, to read what Putin is doing.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I think you're right, IQ. We have to wait and see. And so I was going to throw it back out to Frank. I know he's got to go, but can you give me like 3 or 4 things that our audience can begin to put in their Rolodex of things that would need to happen? What would encourage you? What are the signs that we as Americans can look for of what's happening in the Middle East and the things that would make it what you're talking about happen?
Number one, the Arab states committing troops to maintain the peace in Gaza. Number two, and I think you brought this up before, the committing of funds to rebuild Gaza and to make it into a prosperous area. Number three, people in the Arab states beginning to look at more rational ways of governing rather than the medieval ways that they have been dealing with so far. And number four, the states that have been tilting towards the Hamas in the past, the most recently France, the UK, I believe Canada and New Zealand, will begin to pull back and understand that this is the way forward, not towards pacifying Hamas, but towards opposing Hamas.
I hope you're right about the fourth one,
Yeah.
because as far as I'm concerned, they're all brain dead. All these leaders, I mean it, brain dead. Germany today, as we are speaking, is going to go a dark age of no electricity as we are speaking. So put that in the equation. They have no electricity. They haven't got energy. They shut all the atomic power stations. They destroyed the latest or the last one of the coal mining, and they're depending on green. They're self-committing. Yeah.
True.
Well, Frank, before we let you go and we go to our next guest, how do we get in touch with you online? Social media, websites, all these things, my friend.
All that good stuff is at usagovpolicy.com. It links to our latest program. It links to our latest research articles. So you go to usagovpolicy.com. This week, we're talking to Humberto Cancio on the show. He is an author born in Cuba, and he warns that what he saw happen in Cuba is happening now in places like New York City. We're also going to be talking to Jim Beach, who is a syndicated radio host and an entrepreneur, who talks about why the U.S. should boycott the UN climate conference.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for making some time for us, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you, my man.
Looking forward to our next conversation. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. There he goes. That is Frank Vernuccio from USA Gov Policy. He joins us today here on our big broadcast. And as we continue on, we have got the very impressive Dan Perkins, who is always busy, and we will have him bring us up to speed on all of his projects at the end of the show, and also the latest from IQ Al Rizzoli. However, our next guest is a great guest. Christopher H. Baum is with us. He is with VotRite, and he is supporting Florida's stand against hand counting ballots. And Christopher, you've spent 30 years delivering high-quality IT analysis and services on the use of technology in government and in the election industry in particular. You've advised states, New York, Arizona, Delaware on election regulation legislation, as well as other states and jurisdictions on general election issues. You've also testified before the U.S. House of Representatives, House Administration Committee in support of the Help America Vote Act and the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. Wow, you've got quite the background, my friend. You are busier than a fruit merchant.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time, and thank you so much for having me here. You know, I see you being there in San Francisco.
Yes,
one of my favorites, one of my favorite cities in the world, and of course the future home of Starfleet. So
that is awesome. That's fantastic. So let's start with Dan. Dan, you are always about voting and the accuracy of voting. What
Right.
kind of questions here do you have for Christopher as we kick off this segment?
Christopher, I thank you for coming on the show today, because I do want to ask you what I think to me is an important question.
Sure.
What is different about the mental capacity of everybody else in the world who can process a paper ballot in one day, and the American electorate who can't get it done in weeks or months with machines?
that's a very simple question, actually. Our ballots are big. When you go to Canada and see an election ballot, it's got one contest on it. You go and you vote on the contest, and you're done. You don't do that here. You vote for president, you vote for senators, you vote for representatives, you vote for your local school board, you vote for your governor. So you get ballots that are 6 pages long with 30 contests on it. And that's the big difference.
Okay.
Now, I need to
But-
apologize for something. I'm on a 5G network right now because they are thoughtfully doing construction in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
and the utilities are getting along just about as well as the U.S. and Canada at this point. So, so
So
there
go
are
back
some
to your answer.
issues.
I just want to go back to your answer.
Sure.
Is that what you said about Canada replicated in Europe?
Yes.
Single issue, single one vote ballots.
But typically they are much less complicated ballots, and you've got a lot fewer people voting.
Okay.
So that's what the situation is. And national elections in most countries are run nationally. They aren't in the United States.
So if you take what you just said, now I'll throw a twist at it. In Canada or European nations, do people have to prove that they're a citizen of that country in order to vote?
That really is not part of my germane and not part of my discussion today. Um,
Okay.
we don't at VotRite, our job is not to vet people at the polling site. That is a political situation. I do have my private thoughts about that, but that's not what we do. Uh, we are tabulators. We help people count the vote and count the vote fairly. Once they get to the point where they're casting their vote, we safeguard that vote and we make sure that their voice gets heard.
Okay. And do you believe that by and large the elections process in the United States is safe and secure?
Yes, I do. And the reason is because it is so nebulous. I mean, by and large, elections in the United States are run at the county level.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3,550 counties and parishes in the United States. So you would have to be able to get to all of those individually in order to meaningfully affect a national election.
Well, not necessarily. You can, as was suggested at the last election, that the Democrats were targeting very specific Senate seats and House seats that they were concentrating their efforts on as opposed to mass across the country because they believed with a few, the election was going to be close and with just a few tweaks in who was elected to the House and who was elected to the Senate, you could easily change the makeup of the government, meaning Democrats versus Republicans, with a relatively small number of elections that you concentrated your efforts on.
Assuming that was true, how did that work out for the Democrats?
Um,
Mm.
well, they couldn't, they had a terrible candidate for president. But I said on last week's show, there was a story, I believe it was in San Francisco, that a woman received a UPS box that had Amazon on it.
Yep.
And inside the box were 250 mail-in ballots for California.
Okay. Again, assuming that's true, what's the population of California?
I don't know how many people vote. But the point is that a one-off situation or is that something that happened across the state where many people got these boxes from Amazon full of mail-in ballots. California has a reputation as being the premier ballot harvester in the country.
According to whom?
Lots of different people.
Okay. I have lots of different people that believe that the earth is flat. My point is that if you show me numbers and show me sources, I'll be able to have a discussion about them and I can counter them. If you're saying to me, lots of people say that, I can find you other groups of people that say something opposite. That
I
does
understand.
not address the issue. So the issue is, how do you fairly count ballots?
Do you, as some Republicans believe, that it's important that our federal elections under the constitutions are to be voted on by U.S. citizens, and that,
That is the law.
pardon me?
That is the law.
Right. Do you believe that there were not any illegal aliens who voted in this last election?
I believe that that number is infinitesimally small, and I can show you proof of that, and I would be happy to do so. However, um, you have to take a look at what the law says, and the law actually doesn't say in the Constitution that you have the right to vote. It says that you have the right to have a representative form of government.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's what the Constitution says. Now, it says that if there is an election, who can't be excluded? It says that the terms for senators are 6 years, the term for representatives is 2 years, but the Constitution itself doesn't call for elections. It says that the process is decided by the states.
Yeah, but I believe that the Constitution also says that you have to be an American citizen in order to vote.
Right? So, how many American citizens are you willing to exclude because they can't prove that they're American citizens?
Let's start with the 20-some million that came across the border illegally.
Okay, how much time have you spent on the border?
How much time have I spent on the border?
Yeah,
None.
I lived in El Paso for 10 years.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about this. All right, you want to exclude those 27 million people. Does someone prove that they're an American citizen?
Well, it's either with a passport or a active green card to identify them as a citizen or legally able to vote.
Okay, so I have a challenge for you. Where were you
Okay.
born? Where were you born?
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, where do you live now?
Fort Myers, Florida.
Okay, so here's my challenge to you. I would like you to get a copy of your birth certificate proving that you were born in the United States.
I have one of those already.
Let me finish, please. You need to get to Columbus to get it. You are not allowed to use a credit card, and you're not allowed to use a driver's license because you don't have one.
Yep.
So,
What do you mean? What do you mean I don't have a driver's license?
yeah, I'm saying that, because you need to prove you're an American citizen, and you've never had to prove that before. You don't drink, you don't drive, so you don't have a driver's license. You don't have a passport.
No, that's not true, because every time I leave the country to go to Europe or some other part of the world, I have to have a US government passport that
That's
says I
right.
am.
If you were traveling out of the country, you do, but you're not. You're just going to go to Ohio to get a copy of your birth certificate because you've never had to prove that you're an American citizen before.
So what's the point?
So the point is
Yeah,
that
this is interesting, Christopher. I've
so the
explain
point
this.
is that I have never had to prove that I'm an American citizen before to vote. So now I have to prove it. So I've got to get documentation to do that. So I've got to get back to wherever I was born because I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a passport. I've never had to prove that I'm an American citizen. So now you're telling me that I have to prove it without giving me a way to do it.
Yeah,
You are
but
charging, you are
if you had,
charging me, you are
This
charging me
this
to
is
cast my
interesting.
vote.
you have to, in order to leave the country and return, you have to prove to the,
I've
to
never
the,
I've never been
wait, wait,
past.
wait, wait, let me finish, let
Okay,
me finish.
absolutely,
This
absolutely.
is
You don't
interesting.
have to, you don't necessarily have to leave to get a passport, but you can get a passport, and that passport requires that you submit a copy, certified copy of your birth certificate.
Right,
So in order to get a passport, you have to have had a birth certificate.
right.
That passport can be used as a basis of identification for registration for voting.
But if I have never left the country,
You don't have
if
to
I
leave
have
the country to get a passport.
no, but if I have never needed a passport, if I have never needed a driver's license because I don't drink, I don't drive, and now you're telling me that I have to have a government ID to vote, and I don't live where I was born. So how do I get back to that place without having an ID to get an ID?
And I'm saying that if you take away the things that you've taken away, in terms of things that you don't drink and you don't drive, so you don't have a driver's license. So how do you prove to anybody if you're arrested and you're taken into court? How do you prove that you're an American citizen, that you're not an illegal?
Why should I have to prove that I'm an American citizen if I was born in the United States?
But if you can't prove that you were born in the United States,
But
because you
that's
can't
not
get
the
back to
point.
Ohio to get your birth certificate, point
I
is,
am a citizen until I do not have to prove that I am innocent.
no,
You
no,
have to
no.
prove that I'm guilty.
You're saying you are a citizen and you don't have to prove it. And I'm saying in today's world, in today's society, in the United States, if you can't prove that you're a citizen, then the government will look at you as being an illegal alien.
That's right. And that's been true for about a year and a half now. So,
Okay.
um, what you have done is change the rules and say, all right, you are considered not to be a citizen. You are guilty of being an illegal alien unless you can prove otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the people who came across the border did not have a driver's
Wait. We're
license.
not talking about the illegal aliens. We're talking about American citizens. All right. So you're telling me
This is
that I do not
interesting.
have the right to vote.
But you said that you're an American citizen. But if you can't prove you're an American citizen, how can you declare that you are? I can say I was born in Columbus, Ohio, but how do I prove that?
Why do I
Because
have
I
to
say
prove
I
it?
was doesn't mean I really was born in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. You're guilty of killing 3 people. Prove that you haven't.
What 3 people I'm guilty of killing?
That's irrelevant.
You said I'm guilty of killing 3 people. If I
That's
committed
right.
murder 3 times, I think I'm allowed to ask the question, who did I kill and why did I kill them? Because
You're
if I
allowed to
killed
ask.
them,
You're allowed to ask. That doesn't mean that I have to answer.
that's, of course, it's a free country.
That's right.
This is amazing. Okay, so Christopher, I have an interesting I guess thing to throw into your dynamic here.
Absolutely.
Our other panelist, our other co-host, IQ Al Rizzoli, is originally from Iran.
Right.
He went to uh, somewhere in Europe.
Right.
He has now spent, God, what was it, IQ? How many thousands of dollars
$7,000 and 3.5 years.
to get a green card?
Right.
Can you make the same argument with that? Due to the fact that he's from the Middle East, he lives in Europe, he's now spent the money to get a green card,
That doesn't make
or
him, he's not a citizen.
I
Okay.
will be a citizen.
And when you're a citizen, you should have the right to vote. But
Fine,
you're
I'm not worried
now.
about the voting. With all due respect, I'm not worried about the voting. I live in England, and if you don't have an identity in England, proving you are British, you're gone.
I understand
I
that.
don't care what the law in America is. You are gone. To tell me that an illegal can come and the state has to prove that he is legal, forget it. That doesn't work like that way. You have to have an identity. Now, when somebody is born in America, are they not given a number? A national insurance number of some kind?
Right now, in the past few years, and I can check up the date, you originally were not given a social security number at birth. That's a relatively recent innovation.
How recent is recent?
I had to apply for my social security when I started working at age 16, and so it's been within the last 50 years.
Correct, because I got a national security when I was working in America.
Okay, but the point is that if we are changing the rules that people have to prove that they are citizens, we have to give them a mechanism to prove that they are citizens. You are not allowed to charge a poll tax. Okay, that was decided by the Voting Rights Act. So if you are now making me pay to prove that I'm a citizen, how is that different from a poll tax?
Wait a minute. All I have to do to prove I'm a British citizen, I get in touch with the Home Office. We call it the Home Office. You call it maybe State Department. That's all I had to do.
Right,
Get in
that's
touch
all
with
you
the
have
Home
to do.
Office.
And that's a very easy thing to do if you have a phone, if you can travel. So are we saying now that people
Well, and see, this is something else, Christopher, that I always think about with all the voting and all the illegals and everything. And it also sort of goes to the other side, which a lot of times is the poor blacks and the poor Mexicans who can't get an ID to be able to get to be able to vote. I always wonder if with the voting ID laws make it easier for people to be able to get the ID.
well, see,
But nobody
that
ever wants to touch that part of it. It's
well,
always, well, we've got to prevent the illegals from voting. Go ahead, Christopher.
and that's precisely my point. How many people are you willing to exclude who should
Yeah.
have the opportunity to vote?
Yeah.
And as a percentage of the available universe in the United States, the number of people who do not drink and the people who do not drive as a percentage of the population is very small.
Have you spent any time in New York City?
I lived here for 27 years, every day.
Okay, so in New York City, a large percentage of the population does not have driver's licenses or have, and I will get you the numbers if you want to see them, because they travel on public transit.
Yeah, but
So
I also know that when Biden opened up the gates and allowed criminals to come in, that 60,000 of the people who are residents in the metropolitan area of New York City, 60,000 of those criminals reside in New York City, and they don't have passports, and they don't have anything that says they're an American citizen. They have nothing. And that's why when ICE is going into these communities, they're looking for ways in which people can identify themselves of being in this country legally. And so what we're doing is the issue,
So
in
what
my
you're
opinion.
saying, so your take on this is that everybody should be able to prove that they're an American citizen at any time.
I'm saying that if you want to live in this country and you want to follow the laws and you want the rights and benefits of being a citizen, you should be in a position to be able to prove that you belong here. And if you don't belong here, then you need to leave.
That's a very interesting take on citizenship. That I need to prove that I belong here.
Well, Christopher, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
I went through hell to get a green card. And you are telling me I'm equal to the illegal?
No, I am not. I
But
am
you
saying
are.
that it is. I am saying that it is illegal for uh, non-citizens to vote. That's true. I am saying that it is legal that citizens vote. And what you're telling me that it is more important to keep out the people uh, who are voting who vote illegally than it is to allow the people who are allowed to vote to vote. So
It-
you're saying that it is more important that people not be allowed to vote if they are here illegally than it is for people who are here legally and were born here to vote. That's your balance, right?
Well, if they are born here and they are legally here, they must have some kind of an identity to prove they've been there, let's say in a
Why?
house, in a home.
Okay, so you're
They
assuming
have to
that
have something.
you're assuming that people who do not have homes are not allowed to vote. Is that correct?
As far as I'm concerned, if you cannot prove you are an American citizen, you don't vote. Simple. That's
But
it.
that's not what the
Let me
law
follow up on
says.
that,
That's
IQ.
simple. That's it.
I believe that you are correct that the states under our elections system, the states or counties or cities, some political authority is responsible for conducting the elections. And it is my understanding that in all the states, in order to register to vote in an election, in a federal election, not in a state and local election, but in order to vote in a federal election for a federal office, you must prove to the Board of Elections that you are an American citizen. And you're given multiple ways in which to prove that citizenship. But without proving you're a citizen, you cannot vote in a federal election. You don't have to be a citizen, prove citizenship to vote in a state and local election. But in a federal election, you have to prove to the Board of Elections that you are in fact an American citizen.
All I have to do is affirm it. I have to sign a document stating that I am an American citizen.
An
Well,
illegal can do that.
Yes, they can. And then
That's it.
when the poll books are, if the poll books are then audited and that person is identified as an illegal alien, they are in violation of the law.
And is that a felony or a misdemeanor?
In that case, it is perjury, and perjury is typically considered to be a felony.
Right. So that an illegal, you're saying illegal person in the country will affirm that they are an American citizen, they were born here or whatever, without having to prove it by simply affirming it. But if there's an audit of the voter records and it finds out that that person is in fact not a citizen because they can't find him on the birth records or anywhere, anything else, that's a felony, and a felony in the case of an illegal would be a basis for deportation.
That's correct.
And so,
Yes, but the damage would have been
if I'm
done.
in this country, if I'm in this country illegally, why do I want to take that chance?
And that's pretty much my point.
You're,
So my point is that if you're in the country illegally, you're not going to then expose yourself to additional risk of deportation by voting illegally.
But we know that in California, in that Golden Gate Bridge city that Jim's sitting in front of, that there were people who affirmed that they were citizens and voted in the last election, and the odds showed that they lied, that they weren't, and they were arrested. So it's if you want to change the behavior of people, let them understand what the consequences are, and then show them the consequences on somebody else before they make a decision that could impact them and their ability to stay here. I just don't see, I see some illegals are being coerced into affirming and voting, but because I don't think they understand what the ramifications are of being convicted under a felony of false registration and being in the country illegally. All kinds of stuff's going to hit there. But what I'm saying is, in the federal election, you have to be able to prove that you're a citizen. And IQ has a green card.
Okay.
One of the
Now,
problems before
you
Biden was,
just, from my understanding, you just contradicted yourself. You said that an illegal alien would not expose themselves to voting by signing an affirmation, and then you said that to vote in a federal election, you have to prove you're a citizen. And what I'm saying is that in most areas, you do not have to prove; you simply have to affirm.
well, and I'm saying to you that the risk that the illegal is taking by affirming, knowing that they're not and they can't prove they're a citizen, they're taking a risk. And there are some people who are being coerced because they don't understand the language, they don't understand a lot of things, and people are influencing them to go ahead and sign the mail-in ballot, affirming that they are citizens when they're not, and they don't understand what the ramifications are of lying about your citizenship in the United States and voting in a federal election. I don't think I'm contradicting myself at all. I do know that before Joe Biden was elected president, we know that over 40% of the people who were illegal in this country were people who had green cards, and many of them student visas that expired, and the educational institutions did not live up to their responsibilities to reporting to the government that this person was no longer in school, their school, and that they should be escorted out of the country. So I'm saying is that because IQ has a green card, he doesn't have it forever. He's got to do something or he can lose it. And anybody who's got an education visa, if they don't finish the work and leave school, and the education institutions are not reporting the illegal behavior, you're creating an opportunity for people to stay in the country and create a situation that could be detrimental to the United States. And if that person is convinced by other people that all he has to do is says he affirms, if he even understands what the word affirm means, that he can go ahead and vote for a Democrat in California. It's an abuse of the election system that was not intended. And it's
Okay.
because we have so many millions of illegal people in this country who are abusing the system and abusing the real citizens of this country that we have a problem.
Now, so the question that I have for you is, and you believe that that situation is solved by having Americans have ID when they vote?
They should be, obviously. To me, it's obvious. In England, you cannot vote unless you have an identity. If you can't
We're
prove,
not talking about England. We're talking about
correct,
the United
why
States.
are you different then? Who are you to think they are different? You have to have identity. In Europe, everybody's got to have identity. In China, they have to have identity. In every Muslim country, they have to have. Only in America, they don't need an identity. Bullcrap, sorry.
My point was that I said, just to be clear, clarifying, You do not have to prove citizen to vote in a state or local election. The Constitution says that you must be a citizen to vote in a federal election.
Right.
And if you do not have an identification that certifies that you are an American citizen, to simply affirm that you are creates a risk on the part of the person who's affirming. And I believe that there are people who are voting who are illegally in the country, who are being manipulated by voting gatherers to sign the paper and don't really care whether or not the person is a citizen or not. I do believe that there is a differential between a federal election and a state election. New York City has a rule on the books that illegals can vote in city elections, but they're not supposed to be able to vote. Notice I said supposed to be able to vote in a federal election, because the federal election is separate. They may be concurrent, but it's separate. And as long
Okay.
as we have that, if we say that you need an identification by some agency or part of the government that says that can prove that you are a citizen of the United States, the law's clear in the Constitution as it relates to federal elections. But what's happening is in California that when people are applying, illegals are applying for a driver's license, they also get a notification when they get their driver's license of a voter registration card for the state elections, which then goes to the state elections department, which then creates the opportunity to automatically put them in as citizens to vote in federal elections. There is abuse, or maybe you don't believe there is any abuse in the voting system in this country.
Okay. I'll accept all of that at face value. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I am not going to dispute any of that. How do we get identification to the people who are American citizens who do not have identification?
And see, that is where this becomes the issue.
Well, but see, what I would say to you is that the Democrats will say that blacks and Hispanics are disenfranchised because of their minority. They don't have the opportunities to get the driver's license or what other form of identification, and therefore they can't vote, and they're being disenfranchised. And I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. It's like saying, gee, a black person shouldn't have a credit card because they can't manage their credit. No. If you have a law,
I have not mentioned color or race at one time, at any time. I'm saying that there are people in the United States that do not have government ID because they have never required them. It has never been required for them to vote.
well, I would say to you that we have, I'm taking an educated guess here. We had in the last election about 35% of registered voters in this country who said they were registered, who didn't vote at all.
Yep.
Because whatever the reason is, they didn't like either candidate or whatever, they didn't vote. But if there are people beyond that 120, 140 million people who are registered to vote and voted in the election, the number of people who are voting, who should be voting, is a decision. Even if you're a citizen, because you want to vote, you have to register to vote, and you have to comply with the laws of your state, city, or county for the registration process. But it doesn't mean that you have to vote. There is no obligation, no law that says every American citizen has to vote. Period.
I agree with that. That still hasn't answered the question that I asked.
If I'm looking at people who can't get registered to vote because they can't prove their citizenship under the laws of the state that they live in, that's what it is.
Except I don't have to prove that I'm a citizen. All I have to do is affirm that I'm a citizen.
Yeah, but if
You're
you're affirming, but you're
you're
taking it, it's a different
you're
risk.
you're changing the rule. You're saying affirmation is not enough. I need to prove citizenship. Okay?
And
Because
saying, we're saying that the Constitution says in federal elections, you have to be able to demonstrate that you are an American
no,
citizen.
it says that you have to be a citizen. It doesn't say that you have to demonstrate that you're a citizen. Those are different statements.
Yeah,
Christopher, in a sane world, you are absolutely correct. In a sane world, you are 100% correct. But we are not
Yes.
in a sane world. We are
Oh
not
no,
in a sane world.
I'm
We
not in
have
the same order
criminals. We have
because I'm
millions
having
of criminals coming into America, not to integrate, not to assimilate, but to subvert. So, as far as I'm concerned, you don't show identification, you're out. You don't like it, lump it.
and as soon as you're a voting citizen, IQ, I will take that as a strong recommendation.
Thank you very much.
That is amazing. This has been an incredible discussion. This if folks are not listening or watching and taking this discussion and using this as an example to know just why the voting system is broke, I cannot even. We don't have another 30 minutes to even explain that part of it. Christopher, I would love to have you come back for an entire hour at some stage of the game
That would be
because
my
you
pleasure.
are amazing. Everything you have done today has been a master class on the fact that the voting system in the United States is so beat up with a wiffle ball bat that I don't know if they'll ever be able to fix it. I would love to get your thoughts on voting machines, hand
Well,
ballots,
that's kind of what I
all
came to
this
talk
stuff.
about
Because
today.
I'll tell you, that's another goddamn 45-minute discussion with you.
That that's kind of what I thought we were going to be talking about today. Actually, that's what I prepared for.
Well,
Um,
we definitely want to have you back because this has just been a master class. I will have to say, when I was looking at your bio and I was reading it earlier before when we got you on, I would love to go back and find those depositions and those discussions that you've had with people, because I got news for you. Most of those people, you're so way over their head. Alex Jones always talks about the 360-degree view. those people are not even in the same time zone as you are in, Christopher. You're
well,
just amazing, my friend.
I appreciate that. I think um, I'm just a guy, you know.
You're a very smart guy, I will have to
Christopher,
say.
I am also just a guy, believe me. But I love America. You have no idea how much I love America, although I'm not
Hey,
an
Q,
American citizen.
let me ask you real quick. Where in London are you?
In London.
Well, I know that. Where in London?
Ah,
I mean, I don't want an address. I want to say
no, that's all right. It's all right.
I had for a
Edgeware
short
Road,
time.
Edgeware, in Edgeware.
Okay, yeah, I had for a short time an office in Maidenhead.
Maidenhead. Now that's far away. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So what
Well,
happened?
Those were, but
this has been amazing. I don't want to run us over too far on time. Let's start with IQ. How do we get your books and see your latest writings and
Okay,
everything
my
else?
books are Lifting the Veil, The True Faces of Muhammad and Islam on Amazon. Also, all my articles are with America Out Loud.
Yes,
They
indeed.
publish every article that I produce.
And
Christopher, it was a pleasure meeting you.
it has been a pleasure. We're definitely going to do this again. Dan, run it down for us. What are some of your latest projects, and what did you think of today?
I thought today was very interesting.
Yes.
Spirited, and I think he has a command of the subject matter, but so does IQ, and so does I. So do I. We don't necessarily see things exactly the same, but that's the beauty of America. It's a free country. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, at least most of the time. And my books are available at Amazon.com. And I'm continuing to write the memoir for my friend from Ireland. And writing another separate book on crime. And I'm not going to say more than that. And I'm working on a new website, Fight Back America, which will hopefully be in a position to offer the Trump coins when they become available on the 4th of July of next year, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Fantastic. Well, Christopher, you have been amazing. Run it down for us. How do we get more information on you and find you on social media, all the places? Because you're a damn interesting individual, sir.
Well, again, we didn't really get to talk about my company much, so yeah, I am coming back. But you can track us at voterite.com. That's VOTRITE, voterite.com. And as I said, we take over once you get in past once you get past the poll book. All right. How you get to the poll book, that's a different discussion. That's one I usually don't take part in. But once you get in, man, we are the stewards of the voice of America, and that's where we play. And we want to make sure that everybody's voice who is eligible to vote is heard. It's counted exactly one time, and it is reported accurately.
Well, you have been just amazing, Christopher, and I am in the process of gonna get you back on very quickly because you are fun, and this has been this is one of those shows where at the end of it everybody's like, wow, I think we learned something today. Thanks to Dan, thanks to IQ. Christopher, I will be in touch, and IQ, we'll talk to you on Thursday. Dan, I will talk to you next week, and Christopher, we definitely will talk